How's it going, everyone? Chris here with Simply SNUC. Now, when you look up at the night sky, what do you see? I'll bet you see a lot of stars. Sorry, city folks. But what about all the stuff you don't see? There are countless thousands of satellites, bits of space junk, and even a few people up there in the International Space Station. Now, some of the stuff floating around up there is very vital to our safety, and some of it's actually quite dangerous. I'm looking at you, space junk. Now, with all that stuff floating around, one can't help but wonder, who's keeping track of all of that? Well, lucky for you, that's exactly what I'm here to talk about today. I'm going to bring on MJ from ExoAnalytic Solutions, a company who's using the power of mini PCs to track satellites and space debris. Let's bring him on right now. So welcome, MJ. Thank you for coming by and talking to me about all things floating around in space. Great to have you here.
Yeah, great, Chris. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Very excited to talk to you for a number of reasons. I love space, and I find it fascinating tracking things in space, and also just the sheer amount of space junk. So that kind of leads me into my first question. And you can just ballpark this, but roughly, how many objects do you guys track at any given time?
So here at EXO, we maintain our own space catalog. So we primarily focus on what's called geostationary orbit. So satellites that are about 21,000 miles, 36,000 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. And within our own catalog, there's over 3,000 objects.
3,000.
Mhm.
Wow. And is that mostly satellites? I know you guys also track some debris and things
That'll
like that, but is
be
that
that'll be
mostly?
a combination of active satellites, debris pieces, as well as objects that are not in the public space catalog.
I think it would, I find it fascinating, but I think it would blow people's minds to realize how much stuff is actually just floating around our planet right now.
I mean, so the number of things that are in our catalog are only at the geo regime, right? The more populated
Right.
areas right now are going to be much more LEO. Mega constellations are a huge thing. Most people have heard of Starlink, as well as other mega constellations that are coming. We're now
Mm-hmm.
upwards of five figures of stuff that's orbiting the Earth, so about 10,000 or more. And
Wow,
that's all
that's a
down to
lot.
about like a centimeter in size, right? You kind of got to draw a line on
Whew.
how small of an object are you talking? I think it was a few months back that there was a bolt that ran into the space station's window that kind of caused a little bit of spidering. So some things that are of even that smaller scale are still difficult to track at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible that you can track something that small to begin with. That goes right into my next question. How are you able, or how are your telescopes that you guys use, how are you able to track so many objects and track such small objects? Is there a lot of AI involved or things like that?
Yeah, so kind of rolling the table back a little bit. So we operate a global network of telescopes. We have 35 sites all around the world. That totals about 350 telescopes, roughly 10 telescopes per site. And so with that, it's able to work as much more of a decentralized network. And so every telescope also knows what the other one is doing. So we're able to kind of share tasking across the entire breadth of the network itself. So with that, we're using both our automated processing. So there's some AI involved as far as that goes there, is from the image collection, the processing, focal plane processing, correlation, calibration, and then just the dissemination of information back to a central warehouse. That allows us to use a tool that we primarily call ExoMaps, which is kind of much more like a Google Earth, except for space-based applications.
And so, with all of that information flying back and forth, do you guys rely heavily on computers at the edge, like computers that are by the telescopes that relay information back to a central server or things like that? Or is it
It's kind of
a kind of
all
a
the
different thing?
above, right? We have a shortage of computers is not something that we find ourselves in, right? We have a lot of
Yeah.
computers at each of our individual sites. Each individual node has a
Mhm.
collection, as well as the overall mainframe computers that are sitting back here that are acting as our, our servers and other things that are able to go and really ingest all the data that's coming from all the different unique distributed locations.
So do you guys do data processing at the individual sites or the nodes as you're calling them? Do you do data processing there and then send back? Or is it just all raw data going back and then it gets processed at a central place?
Again, the answer is kind of both. In both cases, it depends on what we're actually going after. As a part of our normal automated robotic processes, a lot of the processing or the initial focal plane is done locally
Mhm.
on site. But we also do a lot of more advanced processing by bringing the raw data back all the way back to our offices here across the United States. By doing more frame stacking and advanced CSO or closely spaced object detection at the same time.
And I've kind of mentioned this earlier, but I don't think people really think about it. It's one of those things out of sight, out of mind. It's
Mhm.
this thing that's going on and it's kind of vital to know where all this stuff is. And I don't think it ever crosses people's minds. So I think it's very interesting that your business is built around basically, in my mind, keeping people safe and keeping our technology safe.
My bumper sticker or elevator pitch, whatever you want to call it, is we were effectively doing the FAA except for satellites, right? So space traffic
Yeah.
management is a phrase that usually gets thrown around out there, but really ensuring safety of flight. Life today depends so heavily upon satellites. Like our conversation right here would not be possible without satellites that are in orbit right now.
Hmm.
Getting Sunday Night Baseball is not possible without ESPN broadcasting over a series of satellites, right? So every
Yeah.
little aspect of time or life today, utilities, whatever it may be, is all reliant upon safety of flight in space.
With all that going on, all that data collection, tracking these 3,000 objects in your catalog, what's the most challenging aspect of what your company does?
Well, our biggest enemy in some ways is going to be the sun, right? Number one, so we're only able to really track when the sun is down. We do some twilight observing, but outside of the things that we can't control, like weather or the sun, just ensuring overall continued operation and performance of the network and all the distributed locations, right? And that is a continued growth and development and reliance upon the hardware, whether it be
Hmm.
telescopes, whether it be cameras or computers like that from Simply.
I know at you, obviously, if you guys work with us, you're leveraging mini PCs. Can you tell me why it is you guys need mini PCs as opposed to, because if you're out at a site, I don't know, is it a power efficiency thing? Is it a space requirement?
It's kind of both, right? So we operate in a very streamlined sense that we're in a very small, relatively speaking, space in which we're housing all
Hmm.
this equipment. So the portability or the small footprint factor definitely comes into play,
Hmm.
as well as just the ability to travel or transportability, right? If we're trying to go and do a remote install by not having these big bulky boxes of CPUs, allows you to go and be a much more efficient operation.
Okay, so it is all about the efficiency for you guys then.
A lot of it, yeah.
For my last question, and this is more just for me and less for anyone watching this, but what's the strangest thing you guys, I mean, you're staring up the skies all night with all these telescopes. You have to see some strange stuff, whether it's, I don't know, UAPs maybe, or maybe you guys have spotted a stray asteroid or comet or anything like that. What's the strangest things you guys have seen?
So some of the most fun things that we observe, in my opinion, are direct to geo launches. So launches that start on the ground and go directly to geostationary orbit. By tracking them through that orbit raising process, they go and they immediately
Hmm.
hit the brakes. And so they go, you see them drifting across the sky and they just stop right where they
It
are.
just stops.
They just stop. Now, the more fun, even past that, are things that we tongue in cheek refer to as rapid unplanned disassemblies. In cases where maybe we've seen a satellite break up in space, but for reasons maybe we can't use the word breakup, so we like to use rapid
Hmm.
unplanned disassembly. A couple of those videos actually happen to be on YouTube, where we go and we see where from a single
Oh,
ball of
cool.
light, you go and you see multiple pieces coming off of that. There's been a couple cases in for AMC 9 and Telecom 1 where we've had both of those kind of going and happening. But those are kind of the most fun things we've been observing.
So if you had seen maybe a killer asteroid heading towards us, you would tell me, right?
Of course, 100%. Like I tell you and
Okay.
all, on
Okay,
all,
good.
all
I'm
my
just
best of
checking.
friends.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like we have that sort of connection now, so it's very important
Yeah,
that you
100%.
tell me. Not that I could do anything about it.
Yep.
Well, those are all the questions I have. This is very interesting to me. Like I said, I'm a big fan of just all things space. So thanks very much for coming on and letting me bend your ear for a minute.
Of course. Enjoyed it.
All right, maybe I'll try and have you back on again, but until I do, thank you again, and we'll see you on the next one.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.